Hey guys, what's going on? This is Brad from the Ed Army, and we have another video for Engine Access. This one's going to be a bit different, as we actually have a speculative video on another card that in theory could be treated as an engine, but you will be able to tell me down below after you see this. But getting into it, what do we have today? We have BT19 Calumon. Now, BT19 Calumon is an interesting card to talk about, and I actually really didn't want to look at this card at first for an engine, because I knew this card existed, but I didn't know how good it was. But after reading it, I think there is some merit to wanting to run this if you can. So starting off, BT19 Calumon is very much like the EX2 Calumon, but the difference here is that it is a 3-to-play cost, obviously. White Digimon that can't Digivolve on top of any Digi-Eggs. No shocker, but more importantly, it has a very interesting security effect where you may play one Digimon card with 2000 DP or less from your hand without paying the cost. For its main effect, by suspending this Digimon, one of your Digimon may Digivolve into a Digimon card in the hand with the Digi-Evolution cost reduced by 2, and then during all turns, this Digimon can't attack or block, and then finally on deletion, you can place this card at the top of your security. Okay, so why is this so interesting to be considered an engine? Well, I had to really look at what Calumon's doing. Now, one thing, it has to be played for 3, so that does hurt. However, when you look at the benefits you get from the card, there is actually a lot here. So the first thing that I want to talk about that maybe people haven't seen is that this is actually a very good economical card in terms of card economy. And the main reason for this is that this card, if it's deleted, right, it goes to the top of your security. Now, in theory, what this means is that it's actually worth playing it even if it dies, because this can just give you an extra security out of nowhere, and your opponent may not be expecting that, and it could help out in the late game, but its main effect is the key. By suspending it, you get to have a reduced Digi-Evolution cost by 2. Now, obviously, it has to be a Digimon card in your hand, but the main mechanic for this, I think, is that it is basically training. It's basically the training delay effect on a Digimon, but you have to suspend it. Now, I think this is really cool. This can be interacted with some cards that can prevent suspension, but for the most part, you're looking at how you'd use this aggressively or as a tool for your own decks. So this card allows you to suspend it, get that reduced Digi-Evolution cost by 2, and then you're off to the races. The reason why I think this is really huge is that there are some decks that they can use trainings, but the first thing I thought about with this card is that you can use it in decks that don't necessarily want to run training. Now, obviously, you'd want to run the training cards if your deck's like monolithic. However, there's a lot of decks that are still like tri-color, dual color, or even like solid colors to an extent. They don't have access to much more searching outside of the new like dual color memory boosts that were released in the limited set. The main reason I want to bring up Calumon is that Calumon, in theory, for 3 cost, if you look at its economy, it is a security card. It is also a reduced Digi-Evolution, but more importantly, it actually has the security effect, which is additionally another part of another option in the form of the scrambles, as when this card is checked in security, it allows you to play one Digimon card with 2000 DP or less from your hand. Now, the key thing I find about this card that's really interesting of that security effect is that it does let you self-start again, so I think that's the key factor. Basically, you get rid, if your opponent gets rid of your Calumon, you put your Calumon to the top of the security, then they check the security, and then Calumon says, hey, play out a 2000 DP or less Digimon. So it basically allows you some interaction on your opponent's turn. They'll start searching so you can get your hand a bit better for the follow-up. But the key thing I'm factoring in here is that Calumon does offer a lot of decks maybe some interesting abilities. Some of the decks I think that you could try to plug this in are definitely something that I was thinking about, like maybe Dragon Links. Now, people would think that's a little weird to put this in Dragon Links, but I thought about this from the standpoint of we have a deck that doesn't have access to trainings in the same way. Like, yes, you could play them, but it doesn't get to use it as well because of how the deck functions. So how would you fix that issue? And I was thinking, well, Links could use this. You could play about 3 copies of this, and the benefit would be that this card also gives you that reduced evolution, but it's still a security card, so it's kind of cool to think about decks that maybe are a bit slower are able to use this card a bit well because it gives you that reduced evolution, but then when it puts itself into the top of security, your opponent now has to think about, well, now I got to deal with that, and I think that's cool. Being able to self-start too is the key thing with Calumon, is that you get to play out those 2k DP or less Digimon, and it's from your hand, so there are ways to kind of unclutter your hand in a sense too, if you think about it. Now, I want to talk about some of its detractors too, because I'm not going to just say, oh, this card's fantastic. One of the biggest problems is that Calumon is sort of unsearchable. There's only a few cards that can actually search for it because it is a white Digimon, and even the decks that it's technically supported for, like the Tamers decks that utilize it, I don't really see that they have any way to search this, so it would be really nice if they get around a support that can search for Calumons. Now, we'll compare this card to its counterpart in the original EX2 Calumon, because I think the EX2 Calumon is a good example to show why Calumon as an actual engine is a little bit difficult to pull off. And the main reason why is for the EX2 Calumon, it has an ability to reduce its play cost as long as you have a Guilmon, Terriermon, a Renamon, or Impmon in play. So you can play out the Calumon for a reduced cost by 2, so you can play it for 1. The additional thing is when it would have a Digimon Digivolve, you suspend this Digimon to gain 1 memory, you draw a card, and you are able to get 3000 DP on one of your Digimon. Now, the reason I think this is really different than, say, the one from BT19 is that both Calumons technically offer the same type of benefits to the decks they're supporting. The problem is when you look at the EX2 one, it has probably the more generic pluses. So you gain a memory, so that's a lot better. You draw 1, that's already really good. And then giving 3k DP doesn't matter, but it's still useful. And the reason I bring it up is having that reduced play cost is kind of what's keeping it more viable than, say, the BT19 one, where I think the BT19 one sacrifices its ability to have its reduced play cost for more generic applications. And the reason I say more generic applications is that if you look at the EX2 Calumon, most people would never run this in another deck. You'd almost always run this in specifically the Tamers-based strategies it supports. However, you look at the BT19 Calumon, you can make a lot of arguments for playing it in multiple decks. So I do think this is where this one card takes advantage over its its progenitor. But the point is, I think that BT19 Calumon definitely can see play if people want to tech it. I think a cool thing too is if this card's already in security and it gets checked, it does give you the ability to play out a rookie or a body for free. So it's still technically not that bad. If you think about it, it's still a solid card. It's just more of which do you want? Do you want these abilities to have maybe this ability to have that reduced Evo cost once, but also if this card gets deleted, you just simply put it into your security. So it gives you a little bit more protection, or do you want to get more buffs and pluses and card economy draws from it? That's kind of the key thing I find about with the Calumons is both of them have card economy built into them. The problem is if your opponent gets rid of EX2's Calumon, it doesn't do anything. They get rid of BT19's Calumon, it does cause problems for them if they were trying to OTK you, for instance, and they just blow this up. Next thing you know, it goes back to the security and they're like, oh, there's another one. But pretty much that's where I'm going to close off today's video, guys. This is more of a speculation. I weighed both the pros and the cons to see if you want to give it a try. I think it's still a solid card. I think this card can find a lot of play in different strategies. It's just going to take more of experimenting to see how people feel. But as always, this has been Brad from the Ad Army signing off. And for all of you out there, to sign on.